In this video, we will work through an example of a curve sketch problem. Our goal is to sketch the graph of one function f of x that satisfies all of the 5 listed characteristics here. I like to start by looking at specific xy coordinate points. It can help me kind of ground my graph. So f of -2 equals 0 tells me that when x is equal to -2, my function has to be on the x-axis. That y value is 0. So I start there. Now let's take the first two limits. So these are looking at what's happening nearby, -2. The top limit is when x is approaching -2 from the right. And since that limit is 1, that tells me my function values need to be getting close to 1 on that graph. And because I know that f of -2 is defined to be 0, I'm going to put an open circle when y is equal to 1. The second limit, as x approaches -2 from the left, the output is -3. So again, I could put an open circle there because I know the function is already defined, and I know my function has to be doing something to get close to -3. So let me just pause here and say a couple of things. Notice that on my axes, I didn't put every single number. I've only put the numbers relevant to the pieces in the list of limits, so that can help simplify the problem. And don't be afraid to erase and start over. So I've used maybe some open circles to help kind of be placeholders, and I've just drawn a few line segments. I can worry about connecting things later. So just a few hints to try to make these problems a little bit easier. Okay, let's tackle the last two limits. The first of these is the limit as x is approaching positive infinity. And so I just want to think about what happens as x gets really, really big. So as x approaches infinity, my y values must also approach infinity. So I can start with where I left off and just need to make sure that my function is very obviously continuing to grow. An arrow will help make this painfully obvious. The last limit is looking when x is approaching negative infinity. So as my x values move to the left, the y values need to approach 0. And so I can just kind of pick up there, and again, drawing an arrow to help make this really clear. If you have an eraser, go ahead and make that a little bit neater. Maybe I'll take another stab at that. You want to try to make sure that your picture is unambiguous, that there's no way you could possibly be misinterpreting what's going on. And let's just go through and double check. So the way that these are graded is we literally just go down the list. Does my graph have a limit as x approaches -2 from the right of 1? And yes, so I can check that one off. As x approaches -2 from the left, the outputs are close to -3. I can check that off. When x is equal to -2, the output has to be equal to 0. I can check that off. As x approaches positive infinity, my function is growing without bound. My function is approaching infinity, so I can check that one off. And as x is approaching negative infinity, my function needs to be tending towards 0. I can check that off.